Hi, I'm Donna Dewberry, the original creator of the FolkArt One Stroke painting technique. I'm here in the Plaid studios today, so thrilled to share another one of our Let's Paint FolkArt One Stroke birds and blossom projects. And in this series, we've done all kinds of beautiful birds, and today we're doing a big toucan. I love it. And so I think when you get through with this, you're gonna go, huh, I painted that. So what I wanted to share with you is that Plaid has done it again this year, and they have made this beautiful kit. And this kit has everything you need to do all my birds and blossom lessons this year. And if you haven't seen it yet, go to plaidonline.com/Let's Paint. And there you'll find all the kits that we have. We have 2 kits for this year. I'm going to share those with you. And we also have other tools and things that I use right there, easy to pick up. And so the advantage of having the kit that I want to share with you is it has the paints, the brushes, the teaching guides, and everything. So if you ever wanted to take a class with me and you haven't, or if you have, you know the worksheets are wonderful. So the reusable teaching guides are the exact size strokes that we're doing in class. So not only can you watch this lesson with me and paint with me, but you can also have the reusable teaching guide in front of you. And we're gonna practice on that and show you how to use it. And this year we've done something new where we've made patterns, and it's really important to have the patterns with the parts of the birds, which makes birds very easy to paint. So after you paint these different birds, it makes it possible for you to paint many other birds. So that's exciting for me to share with you. I also painted a folder for those to go inside, hand painted by me, just for you. And then we have the best paint in the world, and we have every color you need for all the projects that we've done this series. We also have the FolkArt One Stroke paintbrushes. So if you're ready to go paint, I know you can't wait. Come meet me in the studio and we'll paint a toucan. Okay, so I'm ready to paint our toucan, and I know you are, so let's get started. One of the things that's really important is that you go to your kit and you pull out your reusable teaching guide and the nice pattern that we did of the toucan. And then next, what we want to do is make sure that we pull out all the colors that I list right here for us to use. And so what I've done is I put these up here, and I want to share each one of these with you. This is our multi-surface paint. It's going to be beautiful for what we're going to be doing today. And so we're going to be using your pure black, your titanium white, our aqua, the apple red, Pueblo, we have a cobalt U, then we're going to be using the classic green. I'm going to show you some tricks with that. All right, then we have the bumblebee, pure orange, and we have burnt umber. So what we then are going to do is make sure that we have our brushes. Now I have my nice value pack set of brushes that's also in your kit. There's 10 most used brushes, and those are the ones that we're going to have all the sizes we need for our project. We're going to talk about the double loader, the palette, and our brush basin. Those are our tools that we're going to be using. We also have floating medium. All right, so the floating medium is the fluff that's inside the paint with no pigment, because if you haven't painted with me before, we don't use water to work in our brush when we feel like we need some moisture. We use floating medium. It's perfect for our paint. It's the fluff that's inside paint with no pigment. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is this great surface that we're using, and we call this a palette. So it's a fun 4-paneled palette that we're going to be using. It's a nice smooth wood. I'm going to also have a sanding block so I can, at one point when it's all dry, base coated background's dry, then we sand on that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put this right up here, and let's go over some of the things that we're going to want to do with our teaching guide. This is going to be your guide through the whole lesson along with watching the video. You have like my teacher strokes right there with you. Actual size strokes, also blending strokes, or I'm going to show you how we use that. This is a list of paints I just showed you, your floating medium, your brushes that we're going to be using, and the 4-panel wood palette sign. And while we're talking about that, I want you to see that this has got the sawtooth hook on it, and it's to be hung this way, all right? But I want to turn the sign so we're going to be vertical instead of horizontal. So that's going to be how we're going to lay out our pattern and everything. All right, so what I want you to see is there's 2 sides on here. So this side we're going to flip over, and it's going to tell you your background colors, which is what we're going to do right now. And with a 3/4 inch flat brush, we're going to use aqua plus our titanium white. So get those 2 colors. And then as we're going down, we put a little bit of cobalt hue into our color, into our background, because we're going to do an ombre in the bottom part of this. And I added classic green and a little bit of burnt umber. Okay, so see how we're going to have all the colors, and we practice we stroke on it so that you can try it and wipe it before you even go to your piece. All right, now let's talk about the first thing I want to do. I want to do the background base coated, but to do this, there's a couple of things that happen here. I want you to see that when we have this background, I've got mountains in the back, I've got ombre dark because in the forest that's dark back there. So a couple of things I want to show you starting in the back coming forward is I have traced on tracing paper with identa marker that I'm traced the pattern so that I don't mess up my original, okay? And this is the entire bird, so let me show you the toucan upper parts here, and then I'm going to move over here and add the tail, okay? And so when I have this sheet, it's full, and that's the actual size. That's what's wonderful about these patterns. Now, what's going to happen here is you will even see that when I traced it, I used a ruler to make, this is a handy little trick Chris showed me, is I went ahead instead of, I've always tried to just follow the line, but if you take the marker along a ruler, then it keeps it nice and clean, all right? Now, so what I did was I am going to figure out how close to the edge here. So I'm going to come over here closer. You can even measure that. But the most important thing that helps you by putting these dividing lines of the palette is that we're going to line this up here and make sure that they're all right here ready to go on here. And the reason I want to put some tracing on here right now instead of getting the background first is I was wondering where I'm going to have my mountain scenes, all right? And that's a tropical forest back there. And I just kind of like that look. I hope you do. And you can choose anything you want back there and any color you want in the background. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the graphite paper, the dark shiny side down. I'm holding this or taping it into place, but I like to make it where I can flip it up and down so I can see, I can actually lift and see if I'm getting it traced on. Then I'm going to use a stylus, okay? And what I'm concerned about is let's go just to here because that's where the mountain scene is going to stop. Now, the reason I'm doing this, I want to share with you why I'm doing this, is I think it's really important that we don't paint behind the toucan because you'll see the mountain ridges. Like lots of times, if you painted with me before, I do the whole background and then I start my painting on top. Well, I don't want that background in this area, okay? And so mostly what I'm worried about is where this is going to be right here. Now lift it before you move and see if you can see it. I can barely see it, so I'm sure you probably can't. So you can go on a little bit stronger. Depends on what your graphite paper is like. I've got some that's really dark, and then that's more than I want it to be sometimes. Okay, so let's look at this again. There we are. All right, so I just did this much because we are going to come and trace this actually on to our piece later. Okay, Now, what I'm going to do is take a pencil and kind of come in here and get some of the peaks of my mountain here. Okay, so here's the bill. I'm going to pull it down a little bit more so you can see we're hitting all the mountain areas. And so I want to be under this, just kind of sketch. You don't have to have points. I did kind of do pointed ones just because sometimes this can look a little bit contemporary, which is kind of nice. And then come back down here. Okay, that's just going to help you as we're going to come from the top going down with a lighter sky, and then I'm going to start underneath here by stroking real clean lines right here, and then ombreing from the bottom up to those lines. Okay, and now I've prepared the plate for the background, and let's go over the colors again that I used for this. I have the floating medium, I have the cobalt hue, the aqua, the titanium white, classic green, and burnt umber. All right, so the first thing we're going to start with is we want to use our 3/4 inch flat brush. We're going to dampen that brush and lay it on the paper towel. Okay, and in the beginning there's some sizing, so you make sure that you work that out. Now we're going to pick up the aqua and some titanium white. And I'm going to make a mix right here in between. Now don't go and put a little bit of aqua and a lot of white, because you will end up using almost the whole bottle of white trying to get that color like you want it. All right, it's better to do a little bit of aqua at a time. Okay, so I'm going to get a color that I'm happy with back here. And this is the beauty of it. We usually have different places where you can stroke to see or look to see as a guide what color that is. So I'm going to come across here, and what's going to help me to make this go smoother is I'm going to pick out a little bit of floating medium, and then it will coat it like butter. Okay, so we're going to pick up this and some medium. I'm kind of going around. This is really light, so I can come in here a little bit on top of the edge of the toucan pattern that I put there. But I want a hard line where the mountains are. All right, a hard line there. Okay, and then we fill this in. Okay, so now what's going to happen, see, this is just a lighter version of the aqua. Come over here, and right in here, here again, I want to get a little bit of that floating medium, and we're going to go up, down. I'm going to go ahead and get all this mountain line here, skyline there, and up. Okay. I'd like you to be painting with me, but if you are going to paint later, the key is, the beauty of it is that you can freeze it and take your time to base coat this in, because I might be going a little bit quicker than you would feel comfortable with. All right, so floating medium and our aqua mix. So see, I'm brushing this out there, trying not to get a hard line where the toucan would be. Okay. Need a little bit more, so just work that in, floating medium. There we go. Okay, so one thing I like to do is just slap this all in here. That gives you a little bit of movement, some too, and since it's more of a solid color and not double loaded as much, I blended it. Just go back over it and slap a little bit to make sure there's not wood grain showing through, and you have a nice coat on there. Now we have a good sealer inside of this paint, so it's really yummy when you paint with it. And I'm going to have one more spot here because I'm worried that is not going to cover in here, right along there, just to be safe. The next step here, I don't have to clean the paint from the bristles. I'm going to go ahead and just pick up more floating medium and do a stronger aqua. All right, so let's go right in here and chisel a line, and do that all. This is the only time where it's like exact. The rest of it's going to be ombre. Okay. Now I do want to see the difference here. So sometimes when that dries, it's probably going to be good. Just make sure that it's enough difference from the sky to the background here of the mountains. So what I like when we're painting is that to get something a little bit different than everybody else might do. And so that's why I thought, let's do a fun illusion back here. And remember, as we're creating this, we're going from the back on a landscape to the front. And what would be next is easy to see when you have your sample right there in front of you. Okay? Does that look like a good line for you? That you can see clearly is different from the sky. All right? And we're going to come right along here. Okay, now let's start getting some other colors in here. All right. So I've started with more classic green as we're coming down, but put a little bit. You can put just a touch of cobalt hue in here and blend it with the aqua. And see how I'm going back and forth, slip, slap, slip, slap. Just giving you some of that pretty color in there. And I do the edges too. I'm not worrying about the edges right now. You can do them a little bit later. Okay, this is going to give you a really rich look in here. Keep picking it up. The cobalt hue. And make sure, get a little bit of floating medium when you're trying to make this blend in really well, okay? Now, you see how that's happening? Now we're gonna come up, and I'm gonna start with, I'm still not gonna clean my brush out. I'm getting floating medium, and let's work in some of the classic green. So as I'm working this in, I still have paint on the brush, so it makes me able to just work this in. You got to have wet. You can't do this if it's dry. So, and if you feel like that's happening to you, just grab the floating medium on the brush. Okay. All right. Now you might go and get that a little bit darker later if you want to. So as I go down, I am coming back in here and I'm doing a little bit more of a heavier coat, or just a second coat of it. Well, as you're going down, you can just come back and add more and more. And then I'm going to start intensifying it with other colors, okay? But see up here, it worked in really nice. You don't see a line. Please don't see lines. I don't want it to look like aqua, then cobalt hue, then classic green. You see how it blends, it ombres up. So see, look what happens when I come back and I'm putting heavier classic green in here. You see that? Well, at this point though, I still want it light up here. So I'm just going to start working in some classic green and burnt umber. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead across here. Let's go ahead across in here because his tail is licorice, so it's going to really stand out. And that's where I didn't trace the pattern. Okay. Now, right in here, see, this has some wood grain, so I have to kind of go back and forth and make sure that we get that in there good. Now, I need more of the floating medium. And see, I use quite a bit of that because it makes a big difference, but no water, please. All right. So right in here, I'm going to do a little bit more classic green, and it's easy to look at my project and see what happens right here at the divisions of the wood, okay? Now, what you would do, guys, is that you're going to pick up this paint and you're going to go in here and also paint the little slat in between. And it took me a minute or two to go inside there and paint that edge. You absolutely have to do that because that makes the painting flow, okay? You're going to love this surface and think about all kinds of things you can do with this surface. And we have a beautiful kit that has that in there, like I told you. Okay, so I do both sides of that. I'm just going to keep going right now. And then right in here, floating medium and burnt umber and classic. Now you have to worry a little bit about too much floating medium and not enough paint, because then it will look more transparent. Like you can see through there. I don't want that. So you got to make sure you have plenty of paint and then a little floating medium. Okay, back and forth. Now, the reason I want this to look darker is because I want it to be like the jungles in here of all the tropical greenery and the blossoms. And so they will pop with this dark background. And whenever I'm doing wildflowers and all kinds of things like painting like that, at the bottom brown area, I will use dark greens or dark green and blues. So it just sets that depth for you. Okay, 3/4 flat. We're just slip slapping. I'm going to bring some more darker brown in here. And when we do put our tropical flowers and greenery, I can float some of this darker underneath if it's not as dark as we want it to be. So you have another option to do more. Okay, there we go. Now the next thing I want to do is dry this. So I'm going to use my blow dryer, and this is a good time for you to stop and blow dry yours and come back, and we're going to trace our pattern, which we cannot do while it's wet, and we'll get started then. See you in a minute. Okay, so now we've touched it to make sure it's dry, and we are going to lay out where we want our bird to go. So I am coming right here, there again, it's just like a good finger edge from the edge, and I'm going to line up the lines right here, guys. All right, so you can tell where the breaks are in the wood, and I'm going to either tape that or hold that in place. We're going to put the graphite underneath, and then we're going to be ready to trace this on. Now I'm using my stylus, but before it didn't show very well, so I really need to work it back and forth along here. I don't think we have to worry about as much in here where it's lighter, but where we will need to worry is in here as it gets darker. So just go over it a few times. But you can get a light graphite paper, a white one. Okay, so one thing I can do is just see if it's showing. Not very well. So I'm going to work on this for a few minutes, and I want you to trace all your lines of everything, and we'll be back in a minute and we will start base coat. Okay, now that we've traced on our pattern, I pulled out the colors, and the colors that we're going to use for the toucan are very clear right here on your teaching guide, where we're doing the apple red and the licorice with just the base coating. And then the bill of the toucan is very clear on the back side of the reusable teaching guide. And here's the shades, and this is what we're going to do. We're not shading right now, we're just adding all the underneath colors. All right, so keep that teaching guide really close so you can have that right there to go by. And then I put out the bumblebee, the pure black, classic green, apple red, cobalt U, and wicker white into our double loader. All right, now we're not really double loading with that right now, but it is going to help us base coat in the colors we need. Now I'm going to use the 3/4 and the 12, depending on the area I'm going to paint. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to turn my palette around so I've got the pure black first. Wet it, dry it, picking up our pure black, and I put floating medium in the middle there. A little bit of floating medium so that we are ready and smoothly able to base coat this in on this raw wood. Now, I just want to tell you, I want to remind you, in case I forget to say it later, it is important to sand this after it dries, because now what we're doing is base coating all of the main colors of the bird, the toucan, and his bill right now. And then that needs to dry also. And then everything else that we put and stroke on here will go smoother with the floating medium. This is very tedious here, and you want your lines to be nice and smooth, because putting the bumblebee in the center and the pure black on the outside, the bumblebee will not coat and cover the pure black well at all. So make sure you're really careful with that. All right, and so I am going to kind of leave an area where the apple red's going to go. And so if it's got the dark green there, I might put a little bit of the titanium white there and then put the apple red. But this is all the base coating. We want to fill in all of this in here. And I'm just going to lay out where everything's going, because then what I want you to do, put one coat, then come back and do a second coat. Let each coat dry, and when we come back, we are going to make it amazing with all kinds of colors and shading and more detail. This is your flat 3/4 that we're doing this with, and it kind of looks splotchy until we come back. So make that nice area there to be red, apple red. Okay? All right. Now smoothly stroke this, because if it's too textured, it's going to show when you're doing your detail work. All right, so let's come up here. Now I'm going to switch out to use a 12 for some of this detail in here, 12 flat, because it's more tedious around there. All right. Some of you probably wanted to use the 12 for that whole thing. All right, a little bit of floating medium, and we're going to come right around here. Yellow bumblebee color is going to go right in here. All right, and down. All right, so let's wash that off. I'm going to come in here with titanium white and just put a little bit of that here so it dries. Do not put red on until this dries, but that will give you a bright red, apple red. And then I think that's the only place that a little bit right down here where we're going to do this curve in here. And it's going to be apple red all in here. Okay, and then this comes right here. All right, so let's pick up some pure orange. I didn't pull out the pure orange, I'm sorry. I'm gonna pull that out and grab that while I have a little bit of white on my brush. Okay, so it's gonna span a little bit on top of both areas here. And it kind of comes down to a point. Right in here, we're gonna do titanium white and the cobalt hue. And it's gonna be this lighter blue, and then we're gonna come and add more white as we're shading. Okay. And we're going to add some classic green with bumblebee yellow. All right, so I'm going to bring that over here. I'm going to pull that here. I'm going to pick up yellow. This is bumblebee and classic green because I want it a little limey looking. Okay, just tap that and get that nice blend. And what's going to happen here is you're going to carefully go around the pure black. Make sure you don't grab that black. It's safer to take time, which I'm not taking time right now. And let the pure black dry. Okay, and I did come back on your next coat and put a little bit more bumblebee on top of that. Okay, so let's do our bumblebee, because these have to dry, and put red. And you might, if this goes over here, you might want to put a little bit of white first. This is titanium white. Okay, now bumblebee. So we are putting a nice double coat of bumblebee. I steady my hand with my little finger, my pinky, so that you can get these nice edges. Like I said, those edges are way better when you let it dry, so you don't smear the pure black. Okay, so now this is what I want you to do. We're going to break. I'm going to do 2 coats of this here. I'm letting that dry to then put the yellow bumblebee color on top of that. So I'm not going to try to push that. Nice coat of apple red, and then we will be back. Okay, now we're back, and hopefully everybody has their Toucan and the background base coated ready so that we can start putting shading and tropical leaves and everything else we want to put on here. All right, so the first thing I just want you to know is that I traced on where the actual eye is going to go so we have the right size. I've cleaned out my palette and I just have the color for my eye. And now I told you that all this green's raised by the paint going on and it drying, and we're ready to sand off. And we want to sand it off lightly and make sure that we get all the texture off of it, the nubs and the fuzziness, because that's going to keep us from having nice smooth strokes. Okay, I just like to feel around and see if I'm missing anything. Okay, and then we're ready. Okay, now what we're going to do first is I'm going to go in here and pick up with this smaller 10 flat, and I'm going to make a half circle one way just right inside where I traced on the eye. So we're picking up the pure black, and we're going to make a half circle one way and come back around and do a half circle the other way. Now you can do some shading in here, which is kind of nice, so let me show you this. So I'm going to take the pure black, kind of lay it here on the paper towel, take some of it off, and come right in here and side load some of that titanium white. See, I rub it in so that you can just see it's on there a little bit. And you can do this right when it's still wet, and I just put a little glare. Then I can use the corner, or I can get a one script liner if I want to, and put a couple little dots in there, and that gives you a nice glare. Okay, now I'm going to finish drying that, and I'll be back and we'll start shading. Okay, now that we've got the Toucan and all the base coat in there and the eye on, I want to share that I have brought my paint colors in that we're going to use now. So I've got my pure orange, apple red, bumblebee, and I put bumblebee next to the base, to the classic green for double loading. I still have titanium white, pure black, and floating medium. So I want to share something with you, is that when we're got the pattern here, I only went so far because I did trace this on a little bit. And what I wanted to share with you is that you would not put the branch on this, and we're going from the back forward. So I want you to see that I could have put that branch first, but I thought it was better to come put this branch on behind here and this branch on top. So I did trace that much for you, and then I take a pencil and I just kind of come in here and have this whole limb that's coming out this way. I decide how far over I want. Oh, I already did some of that. Yeah, I didn't see that. And then a little bit here. All right, so that's going to go in also with I can go ahead and do some of the other shading before we get to that point, but I wanted you to see that we can't put the talons on to the branches in, and then we're going to take and I'm going to load the brush and show you how I make that like lighter gray color. All right, but let's start with the Toucan and get him looking, or her, whichever, looking really good. So the first thing that I want to share with you is when I'm taking some floating medium on my 12 flat, and I'm going to side load on here just a little bit, okay, the classic green, and I'm going to go right here and shade down along this edge, get a little bit more, and it looked good to have the little bit of the classic green straight color along there. A little bit more. I can also bring a little bit up there. See how that just makes a difference of that shading here? Just gives it a little bit more depth, instead of looking like flat painted colors. All right, so I also, when I came here, I left the blue, put a little bit of white there, but I came to the apple red, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of pure orange and apple red. So one of the things is, as we're coming along here, and I want to shade some more in here, I ended up bringing some bright pure orange in there, which gives you a nice glare. And so if I need this, the bill on here to get this little darkness in here. What you're going to see is that we're going to take a little bit of pure black with the apple red and shade that. So let's come back here again and show you that I'm going to pick up apple red, move it over here, pick a touch of pure black. All right, now I'm going to wash that off and dry the brush. Come here with floating medium. And then now we're going to shade with that color mix I made. All right. So I'm going to float right along here. And see, that gives it a little bit of depth right along here. Now remember, we don't want to stand up on the chisel. That's not floating. Floating is where we get a hard line from the color that we picked up. There we go. See how easy that makes it? But that's by laying the brush flat as we do that, okay? And I already went around there. And while I have this color, I can come right down here and float right along these edges to just give us depth on it too. On that tummy down there, down by the tail. All right, and then by the time we put the branch across there, that would be really good. Okay, so now we're going to look at our eye and the shading on the body, and we're going to blend right here to show you the color that we want for this. And it says right here for you, we're going to pick up the bumblebee and the pure orange to make this mix to come in here and shade. So let's look at the eye. This is where you made the black, which is the pure black circle for the eye itself. And then this was when we put a glare in the eye. We can put even right here, even put another little mark in there where I just picked up a little bit of white. Did that with those dots that we had. Okay, see how it gives it character? All right, and that's with a 2 flat. So now I want to put a glare, a little ring that's there, and that is floating medium, and there again, you saw me do this earlier, we're picking up a little bit of classic green. And so I'm going to come on this outside edge without touching the bill. I got my finger in it. And we're going to come down a little bit into here. And when we get through with this, we're going to then do this other shading here. So I want a larger brush. And one of the things I like to do is to pick up my 3/4 inch flat. And I'm going to come in here and work with the red. So this is apple red in here. And then I put in some of the pure orange. So there's 2 ways that we can do it. We can put all the pure orange in and then do a heavier red. So let's do that. All right, so let me show you really quick what we're going to do. We used a 12 flat for that actually. And we picked up bumblebee and pure orange. Go back and forth. And it says right here, that's number 2, okay? Now, what we're going to do is pick up a little bit of floating medium, and I'm going to come right in here, go back and forth, bumblebee, pure orange, and work it in, a little bit of medium, floating medium, and we're going to come right along here, knowing that we're going to put that apple red in there too a little bit later. All right, now look right here, about right here. We're going to flip that over. And I'm going to take a little bit of that floating medium and come see if I want to take a little bit off. I can just come in there with floating medium and pick that up. That's your 12 flat. Take water and clean off anything that I have and see that I have that I don't want there. I can wipe some of this off with the floating medium to rub it in so we don't have a wide stroke there that I don't want to see. All right, so all that's really fun. Now let's come in here with our apple red on the 12, and we're gonna, so you just go right down here, and it's gonna tell you all the colors that you're gonna use next as we're working, okay? But I'm going to, I want this to dry before I put this red in here. So this apple red, I'm going to have to do it from the outside edge because my fingers will be inside here while it's still wet. So let's go from out here. Now this does have a hard line here. And then come back up. There we go. Now I am going to turn this around a little bit so I won't have my fingers in the wet paint. So I've got a little trick again to show you. I'll bring this up here. Now what's happened, as I came up, I went over here, okay? So there's a couple of spots here, and you're going to take that down into in between. But I don't want to touch it in there. Now let me show you what you do. You're taking this brush, you clean it out, and it's got water, and you just pick that up, wipe it on the paper towel, and it's all clean, okay? And that's if you've gone into the pure black area. It's a little handy trick that helps you clean that up. Okay, the only thing that's left that I want to do is pick up little bits of the white, the titanium white, and I did have a little bit in here, right? And then a little bit up here, because their markings really are dramatic. All right, and then I did put a teeny bit in this area. Instead of more of that straight line I did, I blended it. All right. Now let's look at what's going to go in here next, and that's our brown branch. I want to show you again when I was here doing the pure orange and the bumblebee with that 12. I want you to see that I just came right here and you practice it to see if it looks like what's underneath. All right. And that shows you the size and how that's going to look. And then you have a wet paper towel to wipe this off with, which I usually have a little eraser, so I'm going to go ahead and make one right now, a paper towel eraser, and that's going to help us when we are through, because our paint's made to stick, and so they'll stick to the teaching guide if you don't wipe it as you go, okay? Okay, so now we're going to take this branch that we want to draw, paint that we've drawn on, and we're going to pick up both colors. So if we're just using the burnt umber, we would stroke it right here to see what that's going to look. And then we want to add Pueblo. So we're going to pick up both colors, and we split the brush on the double loader here. Go back and forth. And now we're going to come right here to see if we've got this color right. See that nice blend? So now as we're doing this, if you practice on your guide before you get started, you're going to get that feeling. It's going to be easier and slick on the guide, but it will still give you the feel of what we need to do with that brush to get that wood grain look, okay? So before we go there and do it on our actual piece, We're going to wipe this off, and we'll come back to do our next step on here. All right, so I'm going to pick up both those colors, and I'm going to start right here. I do need floating medium. I can feel it. All right, so we're going to come right here and try to stop right where the pure black is there. And then we're going to come right out. So when I like to share with you that we just go across and then see where it would come out if you do that. And the burnt umber is going to come back down. And I'm going to come back this way. Get a little bit more. Now, see, I'm going to go right inside where that tail feathers are going to be. And we're going to come this way. We want that bright color because we've got so many pretty brights inside here. So you have to have the dark to see the light, and that's going to make it really nice for you. You can even come in with a little bit of pure black and even get a little bit more shading on here. And just remember this was the 12, but it says it right on your guide so you know. A little bit more right here of the black. Pure black. Okay, so let's get some more of the Pueblo and burnt umber now and take this straight across the body. It might be a little scary for you to go across here, but then we have to have something to put the talons on. And I'm going to pick up some more pure black and just put a little bit in there. Okay? But first I want to base coat with pure black the talons that are going to be here. Now, the first thing that happens is that we have an arch at the top, which is where I picked up a little bit of white. So now look what happens here. If we pick up this, we're going to go up and over, up and over. Then we will come back. I just want you to see it on the pure black background. And then we're going to stroke by pushing down and lifting. Push, lift. See the arrows show you which way to stroke this. Stroke. Little teeny bit of white. All right. And these are going to turn to the right and come back in. All right. So practice that until you like the way that looks before we take it on here. And then, so right here, we're going to take and move it up and over. Pure black, side-loaded white, that titanium white. All right, and right here. Okay, so now you can keep coming in here with the white just like we did. Push down and stand up. Pick up a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3. Now I can side load, but I did take my 2 script liner and came back and put some extra white shading for detail on top of those. All right. Okay, so I'm going to take some white, titanium white, and a little bit of inky, and roll that, come out of this, touch it on the paper towel so if it's too wet, and then we're going to come right across here, just like I did on here, little teeny lines across here. Just a little bit of detail. Okay, all right, now let's work on the next thing that I'm going to see, and that is doing the accents of these feathers. So let's practice this for a few minutes. And what we're going to do here, we're going to take, and I want you to go right here, it tells you, we're going to use a 3/4 flat, and then we're going to add the feathers with little teeny bits of the pure black with titanium on it, and then shade those, all these tail feathers and all of them along the body, which gives you, I just want you to look at this really close, all right? So see the little, it's just ghosted in there where you can barely see it. And I'm going to show you how that happens. Okay. Now, I like the bigger brush because it'll come in here and do that for you. Okay, so we're going to practice this. So let's put it right down here so you can try right here on this side. We start down here. See how it looks like a light gray? All right. And then on the tail feathers, see how I'm coming down? And you have more on this brush, on the 3/4, you have more area to continue the shading and compared to if we used a smaller brush. So hopefully, I think we have enough here to show you. There we go. One. Now we're going to stagger it. And then we're going to come up here. I just love doing that. I think that looks so fun. I'm going to get a touch of floating medium and work this in right here. And then I'm going to come right down here and just bring some of this up on the side. All right, so let's look at these tail feathers down here. I have one in the middle, a little bit more floating medium, and I want just a ghost of a color on here. A little bit here, and then I can bring it along here the same way. Okay, I'm pulling this down here so that you can see, if you're looking at this, what's behind. And so we have the branch in here, and then these fronds over here are coming, this greenery is coming in first, and then the palm fronds over that, and then the red tropical flower is in front of those fronds also. And then we have a banana leaf down here, so we can get to that later. But out of these three, this one's first, then second. So then we go to our guide, look at our teaching guide, and let's look at what's first. And that is this leaf here, a large tropical leaf, okay? And there's a large tropical leaf that's more like a banana leaf because it's split, and then the palm frond, okay? So now I'm going to go over here to the bumblebee. I have the 12 flat, and I have classic green and bumblebee, and I come right here to work it in, and I want it a little bit darker on this tropical leaf. That's going to be coming over here. So now what I would do is just come right here and see if I've got that shade right. See how you can definitely see the bumblebee to the green. And then I'm going to come here and hold the bumblebee color on the left. And then I'm going to stroke to fill it in on the right. And if it doesn't leave a vein in the middle, then I pick up and go on the chisel and stroke in a little bit of a vein. Okay, so now let's wipe this so it doesn't dry on here. and we'll be ready to use it again, but keep it in front of you so it reminds you of what you're going to be stroking next. And right on these two planks on this sign, we're going to do these strokes on this one and this one. So I'm going to keep picking up my paint. I pick it up here, work it in, and I might use a touch of floating medium. And the first thing I want to do is figure I want one there, one that comes up here and is down here, and then one right here. All right, so that's going to help you even if it's some under the tropical flower. It's still going to look really good there. So the first thing I want to do is this brush is flat, and we're going up to a point. I'm going to pick up more classic green because I want it really darker green along here. Okay, and we're going to go off the side, and I can come back. Okay, if I want this to be just a little bit darker, what I did down here was get a little bit of burnt umber. So I can pick up a little bit of burnt umber on that classic green and just work that in because it's still pretty light to me. And all I have to do is come right back there and see how that gives it a little bit more depth. All right, so I can even load the brush with my blending in there and not the double loading part if I have enough paint there. So now I'm stroking down on this side. And I pick up a little bit more. And I'm going to stroke on this side. And I'm still keeping the dark on the middle there. Okay, so then touch of burnt umber on the classic green, a little bit more. And so what I want to do right in here is just have a little bit more of the darker color. Let's pull a little bit more bumblebee. Okay, one more. Now this one, let's bring this one over a little bit more. And this one over a little bit more. I want them big enough that they touch each other a little bit here. So it's nice that you can just keep stroking over and still have a nice piece of shading there. All right. Now this last one over here is more of just the two colors, the classic and the yellow, which is the bumblebee. Maybe a little bit here. A little bit more of the burnt umber in there, okay, guys? Then a little bit of bumblebee. There. All right, so now what we want to do is come over here and practice this brighter green. So I can work it, keep it down here away from that burnt umber. All right, and so I also want to check this, and it's not quite as light because I do have the burnt umber on my brush, so let's move this here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the green, a little bit of yellow if you have colors that aren't next to each other. There you go. And so we will just wipe this off and try that again and see if that's bright enough. There we go. All right, so now what we're going to do is each one of these palm fronds here, I want you to see you touch, lean slightly, and slide. Now you have the actual size stroke right here. So as you're practicing this, this will make you a muscle memory, help you remember what we're doing as we get it to our surface. All right, so look, touch, lean, slide, lift, chisel, pressure, lift. And you practice this, and then the finish is off. You're going to take a chisel and make the stem there. So practice that until those feel comfortable for you. And then let's get it off of everywhere here because it'll dry and it doesn't come off easy. All right, so I want this a little bit up in this area here. So what I've done is you can decide where you want it. I wanted it close enough that some of it came over here, over where those other tropical leaves were, and then one coming up there. And now we go clean this up and re-stroke it after we get through here. I think I need to stay up here some more. All right, so I'm right here. I'm chiseling with pressure and standing up. All right, so right here. Now this is what I want to do. I want to make these first couple a little bit smaller. And then I'm just going to slightly get larger with each one. All right, so wherever you start here, you'd start over there also. More paint. And with these single strokes, you don't necessarily need floating medium, depending on your surface, if it's really dry. Okay, now what I like to do is I like to have some that are tight here, and then I have some that come down. Some of the fronds touch here and come down. And then this one might come up. And then I come right in here and have a couple that might come right on top of that leaf there. And I am going to add a little bit of the burnt umber to the classic green. So when you're coming across here and here, you're going to see that darker frond here. There we go. Now this is the time to clean up. There we go. All right, so the key is to make different layers. And before I get to the big tropical red flower, I'm going to come right here and I'm going to pick up a little bit of the cobalt blue. And so let's just put a little bit right in there because I'm just going to dip into it. All right, so what I've done on here is I'm dipping a teeny bit of the blue cobalt U into the classic green, right? All right, then when I'm coming here, I'm making sure it's that color. That color is what hit the top edge. So on the bottom here, we are going to use the two colors we just used. So we're going to come right in here and pull up. Okay, and then we float the cobalt U along there. All right, and each one of these leaves take a little bit of practice, and you could even paint it on a sheet of paper to see like, oh, that looks better, and see yourself improve. But this is a good practice sheet that makes it easier for you to have my stroke right there with you, so you're just not watching the video going, how is she making that fit there? Because as you're stroking on top of there, it tells you each one that's going next, and it tells you by pushing on it, you'll see how much pressure, lots of pressure, flat of the brush, very little pressure, okay? And then the strokes to show you what it's supposed to look like. So down in here is where I told you, if you look at this, it was almost black looking in there. I just need this to be really dark enough that this leaf is going to pop. So let's go back. We can still do this with the 12 flat, and I'm really close to the bottom of this tail right there. So I'm going to curve down. There we go. All right. And so we're going to come so far. We're going to be a little bit wider, a little bit of cobalt mixed in with this. All right, so look, we're going to come here and then split and come back down. I'm just going to base this in and then I'm going to shade it. Okay. And right here, we're going to chop back up. Okay, now I'm going to side load the cobalt. Go back and forth a little bit. And I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes because I want to come back. Let's see, I might try it. See, it's going to be way easier if we let that dry a little bit. All right, so let's lay out where the red flower is going to go. This is a good place for you to practice on this. We're going to use a 3/4 flat because we can make this stroke really easy with this larger brush. All right, this one, because of the detail, using 3/4 or a 12 is to help you lay it out. But then on here, we are going to go and pick up the apple red. And you can read it right here. It says the apple red and a touch of pure black. Okay? But the first thing is to lay out the apple red. Now, this is a little trick that you can do also. You can lay your tracing paper here and trace this flower and then transfer it onto here because it's got the size of the flower and everything right there for you. So let's pick up the 3/4 clean brush. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the apple red again, little bits of the pure black. Check it out here again, see if I need more red. Okay, now I want you to slide this stroke right along there. See, I'm pushing and lifting. Push, a lot of pressure, stand up and roll. So you just practice that a while before you take it to your piece and then to your project. Then I'm going to take, before I do that, because I don't want this to dry, and wipe that off. So practice going each way, going to the right, going to the left, and even coming down here. Okay, so now let's see where we want this to go. I had one thing that helps you is you can just take a piece of chalk and find your center. So my center is right here. So 4 fingers from the corner. See that? 4 fingers from the corner, a little bit spread. And I could put where the center is going to go. Now after you have the center, everything's going from there. So I can do a little bit larger here, a little bit skinnier there. Take it over a little bit more. There we go. All right, and I can use my wet eraser. Okay, then we'll have another one over here. Then we came across. And then let's get a bigger one that's going to come all the way from there. And one more here. I like to just put one, but I just want you to visually see it. I put one stem here and one here. So now when I'm picking up the paint, I've got the apple red. If you have enough paint on this brush, you really won't need floating medium. But we will see, this is the pure black again with the red, apple red. Okay, so I'm going to come right here, push, and stand up. So pressure, lift. So this one right here is pressure I kind of want the bright apple red on the outside and the pure black shading on the inside. Okay, now with this apple red, what I love is it's so bright that you get really nice color even on the dark background. Get a little bit of pure black every so often. A little bit more. Now what's going to happen here, sometimes it's easier to start up here thin and then pressure. So thin, then pressure. Now when this all dries, I will go back. I just like to tell you this in case I forget to repeat it later. I will go back and put just the apple red. Really will look bright if I stroke just the edges here and there. So some of these will come on top of the ones underneath. So look, if I pick up just apple red, all right, and we'll see where I just put the one. I'm going to come back and make it look full. Right here. And then one last. All right. Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to come over here and shade right along here. Let's pick up the classic green and bumblebee and work that in. And then what I'm going to do is right along here and pull up. And then a little bit along here. It looks like the underneath is dark enough for this. Okay. And every once in a while you could take a teeny bit of the bumblebee and pull up. That even had a touch of the red in it. So now what I want to do is take off the chalk, but I really need my flower to dry, because when I start messing with it like this to take off the chalk, you might see that I already touched the red, so don't do that till it's all done. And then you can see well. Now, I'm going to take the classic green on a 12, and let's look at this stem right here. It's showing you classic green with a little bit of cobalt hue and bumblebee as we're shading these. So we're going to come right here and pull it down. I'm going to work a little bit of cobalt into that, pull it down here. See my little fingers pulling it as I'm holding it steady. I like to start up here because that's where I want the pod to be, and it's easier to see where the center is to the pod. Where we want it to be is by looking where the center of your flower ended up being, because yours might be a little bit different than mine. Then I have the classic and the classic green cobalt blue hue and some of the bumblebee. Work that in, and then this is what you're going to do. We're going to come right here and do 1, 2, 3, and we keep getting smaller as we come to the top. Okay? And I have a more blue there than I want to have, so get it to where it's exactly the colors we're showing you here. All right. So, like I said, we're going to start right here and the center. All right. So the center's right here. Remember what I said, I come back later. See, that's kind of dark. Come back later and shade a little bit more of the apple red on the edges. All right, so I'm going to come up. Remember how I went behind the bird? All right, the toucan, then we can come right here. And so that's where I want to head to. And then we're right there. Let's try to come real thin right here and do it one more time. So it's got a nice, bright center. All right, and sometimes I've done twisted looking up here on the top, but if we come right here, we're going to go one. Oh, we need more color, more blue, classic green, cobalt U, and we're going to go right here. And we're going to just keep coming really tight and smaller as you go. And then there's the top. All right. So let's go back and look at this when it's all finished on here where we have extra red. See, the apple red, it's brighter there. You can shadow a little bit more pure black in here if you want. And see, I shadowed a little bit of the pure black underneath here also. So see, that just sets the bird back, the toucan, so that he looks like he's behind the branch a little bit more. All right, and the same thing, I came in here and shaded along here if it wasn't dark enough. Okay, so now I'm to show you how I did the shadow down here. I put floating medium on the brush first, and I'm side stroking the pure black. There we go. And see how that really intensifies the look. And I need to come right under here like I was sharing with you. Let's come right along here. And then right under here. Okay, so the floating medium, what you can do is you can keep going over it. If you've done too much, you take floating medium and pick some of it up. But see how that makes the bird look like it sits right behind it? And it really adds to that. I can also come in a couple of places, like if my stem gets a little big, mine got, because I went over it a few times, got a little large. You can run your chisel of your brush with some pure black right along there, just a little bit. And you can come right under here to set that center. But remember, we don't want to mess with that too much till it's dry. Okay, so now I want to get my smaller, I really think we are going to grab, it'll tell you right here which one we're going to do. Putting the zigzag lines on here, we're going to use a 2 script liner right across in here, all right? So we're going to pick up some pure black, and I'm going to turn this around, guys. It's easier to pull this right in here. So I came right in this area, and it's a real dry brush. All right, because they're not exactly perfect. All right, and then you come right in here. I didn't make it inky. I just picked up thick paint. All right, get some more pure black. All right, and then we want some smaller ones. Okay, a little bit shorter as we go. And then these down here, I did kind of, in this green area here, you can make it a little zigzag. Now this is, I just want to show you, I made that mistake just on purpose so I could show you that you can take a wet paper towel, because it has a sealer in it, and take that right off. Isn't that great? So you don't have to live with it if it's not like you want it. All right, so I'm going to come back here and just do little teeny little zigzags right in here, and those just give lots of detail to his bill. And parrots have all that bright vivid color, makes a big difference. And look how much that changed that look. Okay, please now guys, watch the video over again. If there's a spot you feel like you didn't get caught up to, that way you can go over and check each thing that you painted and make sure it's like you want it. And thank you for being here today. It's a toucan. Wasn't that fun? He is so dramatic. Look at his bill. I mean, when I got through with this, I went, oh, that is so pretty. That's what I hope you felt when you got finished with this project. And I would love to have you come join Let's Paint with Plaid. If you haven't, our Facebook group is so much fun. We have educators, and Andy and Chris and Emily. There's so many. Jesse, everybody's out there teaching that are the educators here at Plaid, and we're having a great time doing it. And we love to see the pictures that our students post. And I'd love for you to put this toucan up there and share it with other paintings that you do with One Stroke. And to do that, I want you to go hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, okay? And then I also want to share with you that we have more classes in this Birds and Blossom series, and I would love for you to go look at all of those. And we have an owl coming up, so wouldn't that be fun? So I get to teach you beautiful eyes and feathers and beautiful fall leaves. And until next time, let's paint.